My name is Harold Bennett. I am 68 years old. 3 weeks ago, I bought the most expensive watch I have ever owned. Not because I needed it. My old one still worked fine. It had a cracked face, a tired leather band, and a little fog under the glass. But it kept time well enough. That was always my rule. If something still worked, you did not replace it. Then, 2 days after that, I bought 2 first-class train tickets for my wife, Elaine, and me. A weekend trip down the coast. Big windows, soft seats, a dining car with white tablecloths. I did not compare prices. I did not wait for a coupon. I did not call my son to ask if he thought it was sensible. I just paid. And I sat there staring at the screen with my hands shaking, not because I was broke, not because I had done something illegal, but because for almost 45 years, I believed spending money that way made a man weak. I believed a good man saved. A good husband went without. A good father wore the same boots until the soles gave up. A good provider never asked, what would make me feel alive? He asked, what might go wrong later? That question ran my life. It ran my marriage. It ran our vacations, our dinners, our birthdays, and most of our quiet Sundays. I thought I was protecting my family. I thought I was being careful. I thought I was being the strong one. But I need to tell you something now. Sometimes fear wears work boots. Sometimes it carries a lunch pail. Sometimes it calls itself responsibility for so long that everybody starts believing it. Even you, especially you. I spent most of my life fixing machines for other people. Engines, presses, conveyors, old furnaces that coughed like tired men. I could hear a loose bearing before anyone else noticed the sound. I could feel trouble in a motor through the palm of my hand, but I could not feel my own life slipping out of alignment. Not until lately. Not until Elaine dropped a coffee cup on a Tuesday morning. Not until I found those old train tickets in a box under my workbench. Not until my grandson asked me a question so simple I had no answer for it. And not until I stood in a jewelry store holding a watch I did not need and felt something inside me break open. Let me tell you how it started. It was not dramatic. Nothing in my life ever started dramatic. It started in the garage with dust, cardboard, and an old shoebox I should have thrown away years ago. I had gone out there after breakfast to look for a socket wrench. That was the kind of thing I did when I did not know what to do with myself. Retirement sounds peaceful until you have spent your whole life being useful. Then peaceful can feel like unemployment. With better shoes, Elaine was inside, folding towels in the laundry room. The radio was playing low. The house smelled like toast and the cheap coffee I had bought on sale. I still bought the same coffee I drank when the kids were little. It came in a big plastic tub. It tasted burned before it even hit the pot. Elaine once said, the good coffee smelled like Christmas. I told her coffee was coffee. She never brought it up again. That morning, I was moving paint cans and old extension cords. When I saw the shoebox, it was on the bottom shelf behind a broken drill charger. The lid had gone soft at the corners. Across the top, in Elaine's handwriting, were the words, retirement trip. I stood there for a minute with my hand on that box. I knew what it was before I opened it. A man can forget a date. He can forget where he put his keys, but he does not forget the promise he talked himself out of keeping. Inside were 2 train brochures, a folded map, and an envelope with our names on it. Harold and Elaine. Coastal Line. 2 passengers. I remembered buying them. I had been 59. 1 year from retirement. My knees hurt every night then. Elaine had been cutting pictures out of travel magazines. She taped one to the refrigerator, a silver train running beside the ocean. She would stand there with her morning tea, looking at it like it was a window. I told her we would go. I said, when I retire, we will take that train. She smiled like a girl. I can still see it. I do not mean young. I mean unguarded. There is a difference. Then the water heater went. Then property taxes came due. Then our daughter needed help with her roof. Then I looked at the price again and felt that old tightening in my chest. So I said what I always said. Maybe next year. Next year became a phrase in our house. A clean phrase. A harmless phrase. A phrase that let me feel responsible while I postponed joy. The tickets expired. The refrigerator picture came down. Elaine never complained. That was the trouble. She was too kind to make my fear defend itself. I sat on an overturned bucket in that garage and held those old tickets. They were thin and faded. The ink had softened, but my name was still there. So was hers. 2 seats for a life we never entered. I put them back in the envelope. Then I put the envelope on the workbench. I told myself it was nothing. Old paper, old plans. Everybody has things they never got around to. That is what I told myself. But the box stayed open, and for the rest of the day, I kept walking past the garage door, like something inside it was breathing. The second thing happened that Saturday. Our grandson Mason came over. He is 17, tall as a fence post, and always hungry. He was sitting at our kitchen table, showing Elaine a concert ticket on his phone. Some band I had never heard of. The price made my eyebrows go up. I said, for that kind of money, they better come home and mow the yard. Mason laughed. Elaine smiled. I felt safe in the joke. Then I looked again at the ticket price. I said, you can hear music for free these days. Everything is online. Mason nodded, but he did not argue. He just looked at me with that young, honest face. Then he said, Grandpa, didn't you ever want to go somewhere just because it felt special? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. That bothered me. I had answers for everything. I had answers about oil changes, mortgage rates, hospital bills, and why you should never buy the extended warranty, but I did not have an answer. For a 17-year-old boy asking whether I had ever wanted anything special. Elaine looked down at her tea. Not sad, exactly. Just quiet. That quiet stayed with me. After Mason left, I went to the back porch. I watched the maple tree move in the late afternoon wind. The old screen door tapped behind me. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a small warning. I thought about all the times I had called something foolish because I was afraid to want it. Restaurants, trips, good shoes, seats close enough to see a singer's face, a room with a view, fresh flowers in January. Elaine once wanted fresh flowers every Friday, not roses, nothing fancy, just something yellow in a glass jar by the sink. I told her flowers die too fast. She said, that is sort of the point. I laughed in, not cruelly, just like a man who did not understand. For years, I thought Elaine was the tender one, and I was the practical one. Now I wonder if she was the brave one. The third thing happened 4 days later, Tuesday morning. It was raining, soft and steady. Elaine was standing at the counter, pouring coffee. I was reading the electric bill. That sentence alone could describe half our marriage. Her at the counter, me with a bill in my hand. The cup slipped. It hit the floor and broke into 3 clean pieces. Coffee ran across the tile toward my slippers. Elaine said, oh, for heaven's sake. She laughed, but it was too quick. I looked at her hand. It was trembling. Not much, just enough. She saw me looking and tucked her fingers into her sweater sleeve. I'm fine, she said. Just clumsy. But Elaine was never clumsy. She could thread a needle in a moving car. She could peel an apple in one long ribbon. She could button a child's coat while holding a grocery bag under one arm. I had seen those hands do everything. Pack lunches, smooth, fevered foreheads, fold church clothes, hold mine in hospital waiting rooms, and now one of them had failed her for half a second. That was all. Half a second. But half a second is enough. When you are 68, it is enough. When the person you love has started walking slower upstairs. Enough when she falls asleep during shows she used to finish. Enough when she asks the same question twice and pretends she did not. I knelt to pick up the broken cup. Elaine told me to be careful. I said, "It's just a cup." But that was, I felt time, not the kind on a clock, the kind that shows up in someone's fingers, the kind you cannot bargain with, the kind no savings account can stop. I threw the broken pieces away. Then I stood at the sink and washed coffee from my hands. The water was warm. My hands looked older than I remembered. Scarred knuckles, thick nails, a burn mark from a factory belt back in 1986. These hands had held on to so many things: tools, paychecks, receipts, coupons, steering wheels, ledger books. They had held on so tightly that I started to wonder what they had let go of. That afternoon, I went upstairs to change my shirt. Elaine had put laundry away. My closet was as plain as a hardware aisle. Blue work shirts, gray sweatshirts, 2 pairs of good pants, 1 dark suit for weddings and funerals. At the far end, inside a dry cleaning bag, was a cream-colored button-down shirt. I bought it 12 years ago. Elaine picked it out. We were walking past a store window downtown. She stopped and said, "That color would look handsome on you." I checked the price tag. Too high. She said, "Just try it on." I did. She was right. It fit better than anything I owned. The clerk said it was Italian cotton. I did not care where the cotton was from. I cared that it cost more than 3 work shirts combined. But Elaine looked at me like she had found something she wanted to keep, so I bought it. Then I never wore it, not once. I told myself I was saving it for a special occasion, but every occasion became too ordinary for the shirt, or too risky. Restaurants spill, grandkids grab, weather changes, bodies sweat. So the shirt stayed there, clean, perfect, unused, a little museum piece to the man I might have been. I touched the sleeve through the plastic. It made a dry whispering sound. That sound embarrassed me. I cannot explain why. Maybe because cloth should not outlive courage. Maybe because I had kept a shirt safe while letting whole years wear out. I took it off the hanger. Then I put it back. That was how trained I was. Even alone in my own bedroom, with nobody watching, I still could not give myself permission. I went downstairs in the same old flannel. Elaine was in her chair by the window. She had a blanket over her knees and a crossword puzzle in her lap. The rain had stopped. Light came through the curtains. In a pale strip, she looked up and smiled. I almost told her about the tickets. I almost asked her if she still wanted to take that train. But the old voice came first. What if the roof needs work? What if medical bills come? What if one of the kids needs help? What if this is foolish? What if wanting it makes you selfish? So I said nothing. I sat across from her. The television murmured. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, water dripped from the gutters. It was a perfectly ordinary afternoon. That is what scared me most, because I suddenly understood how a man loses his life, not all at once, not in some grand disaster, not with sirens or shouting. He loses it in ordinary afternoons, in reasonable decisions, in waiting for the right time, in saying, maybe next year, until there are not many next years left. I looked at Elaine's hands, resting on that crossword puzzle. One finger still trembled slightly. She did not notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to say. Then she read a clue aloud. 8 letters, she said. Means to delay. I stared at her. She was just doing her puzzle. She had no idea what she had said. But my chest tightened so hard, I had to look away, because I knew the answer before she did. Postpone. That was the word. And for the first time in my life, it sounded less like patience and more like theft. I did not answer her right away. Elaine looked at me over her glasses. Harold? I cleared my throat. Postpone, I said. She wrote it in the squares. Then she smiled, pleased with the fit. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, because life had just handed me my whole autobiography in 8 little boxes. Postpone. That was my religion. I postponed trips. I postponed rest. I postponed joy until joy started sounding like waste. I went out to the garage again before supper, not for any reason. That is what men like me do. When feelings get too close, we check oil, we sweep sawdust, we tighten something that was not loose. I stood at my workbench and looked at the tools lined up on the pegboard. Every wrench had its place. Every screwdriver faced the same direction. I had always loved that. Order made me feel safe. A clean bench meant the world had not beaten me yet. But that evening, the neatness looked different. It looked like a shrine to control. I opened the top drawer. Inside was the pocket knife my father gave me when I turned 16. He was a hard man, not cruel, just hard in the way poor men get hard when softness seems expensive. He worked at the rail yard. His hands were always black around the nails. When he gave me that knife, he said, "Take care of what you have, and it will take care of you." I believed him. I still do in some ways. But I think I misunderstood what you have meant. I thought he meant tools, money, the house, the truck, the pension. I never thought he meant mornings, or laughter, or my wife's face when she saw something beautiful. That kind of thing did not seem practical enough to protect, so I protected the wrong things. I sharpened that knife more often than I sharpened my own attention. I waxed the truck more carefully than I tended our memories. I kept receipts in labeled envelopes, but I let years pass without keeping anything worth remembering. That is not an easy thing for a man to admit, especially a man who did his best, and I did. I did my best with what I understood. I worked double shifts. When the kids needed braces, I took side jobs. When the furnace failed, I packed my lunch every day in the same dented metal box. Bologna on wheat, apple, coffee in a thermos with a lid that never poured straight. I wore earplugs at the factory until they turned yellow. I came home tired enough to fall asleep sitting up. There is honor in that. I will not pretend there is not. A man feeding his family is not a small thing. A man keeping lights on is not a fool. But here is the part. I did not understand. You can be responsible and still be afraid. You can provide and still disappear. That thought came to me. With my hand on that pocket knife, it did not arrive like wisdom. It arrived like a draft, under a locked door, cold, unwelcome, impossible to ignore. After supper, Elaine and I watched the news. She sat in her chair. I sat in mine, same places as always. The space between us was not far, maybe 6 feet, but some evenings, 6 feet can hold 30 years. She reached for the remote and missed it the first time. I pretended not to notice. That was another habit of mine. Pretending was my politeness. If I did not mention the tremor, maybe it was not getting worse. If I did not ask about the stairs, maybe she was not getting weaker. If I did not speak the fear, maybe fear would behave itself. A commercial came on for a river cruise. Older couples standing on a deck, blankets around their shoulders, warm light on the water. Elaine watched it. Not long, just long enough. Then she looked back at her puzzle book. I saw her do it. That little withdrawal, that small putting away of wanting. She had learned it from living with me. That thought hurt more than the price of any ticket. I used to think my thriftiness made her feel secure. Maybe sometimes it did, but I began to wonder how often it made her feel foolish for wanting more than enough. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store. I needed screws. At least that was the excuse. The store sits beside a strip mall with a little men's clothing shop. I had passed it for 20 years, never gone in. The mannequins in the window always looked too comfortable, too polished, like men who never crawled under sinks or patched gutters in November. But that morning, there was a watch display near the front window. Nothing flashy, no diamonds, no gold face big as a jar lid, just a simple watch with a brown leather band and a clean silver case. I stood outside, long enough for a woman inside to glance at me twice. Then I walked away. I bought the screws. I sat in my truck. I did not start the engine. Rain from the night before still clung to the windshield. The world looked blurred. I kept seeing that watch. Not because I wanted to impress anyone. At 68, a man runs out of people to impress. I saw it because my old watch had become a kind of insult, not to poverty, not to modesty, to time. It kept ticking on my wrist, cracked and clouded, while I acted like time itself was something I could save. That was the pattern interrupt, not the store, not the price. The realization that I had spent decades respecting money more than minutes. I turned the key off again. Then I got out of the truck and walked into the clothing shop. A bell rang above the door. The place smelled like cedar and new fabric. A young man asked if he could help me. I almost said no. The word was right there, ready as a reflex. No, I am just looking. No, I do not need anything. No, this is too much. No, not today. Instead, I pointed to the watch. Can I see that one? My voice sounded rough. He set it on a small piece of black cloth. I picked it up. It had weight, not heavy, just present. The leather felt smooth, not stiff, like the bargain straps I always bought. I turned it over in my palm. The back reflected the store lights in a soft circle. The young man told me the price. I nodded like I heard prices like that every day. Inside, my old self stood up fast. Absolutely not. Ridiculous. Your watch works. Think of the insurance deductible. Think of Elaine's prescriptions. Think of the kids. Think of anything except the fact that you want it. I put the watch down. Then I picked it up again. That small motion took more courage than most people would understand. The young man waited. He did not pressure me. I looked at my wrist. The old watch sat there like a habit. The glass was scratched from years of work. A black line crossed the face where I hit it against a steel frame at the plant. I remembered that day. I was 43. My supervisor told me I should replace it. I said, it still tells time. Everybody laughed. I felt proud. That pride looked different now. It looked like a man applauding himself for needing nothing. I bought the watch. My hand shook when I signed the receipt. The young man wrapped the box in brown paper. He asked if it was a gift. I said, yes. Then I stopped. No, I said, it is for me. Those words felt strange in my mouth. For me. I could say for the house easily, for the car, for the kids, for the taxes, for Elaine. But for me, felt almost indecent. I carried the bag to the truck, like it might accuse me if I moved too quickly. I did not tell Elaine right away. I put the box in my dresser drawer under a stack of undershirts. That was my first instinct. Hide the evidence of wanting. That evening, Elaine made soup. I watched her chop carrots. Her hand was steadier then. The knife tapped the board in an old, familiar rhythm. For a moment, everything seemed normal again. That is how denial survives. It gives you one normal evening and asks you to build a house on it. I almost did. I almost left the watch in the drawer. I almost let the train tickets stay old paper on the bench. I almost returned to the comfortable poverty of always being sensible. Then Elaine said, without looking up, do you remember that little inn near the state park? I did remember. We had passed it years ago. After visiting our daughter, it had rocking chairs on the porch and yellow lamps in the windows. Elaine wanted to stay one night. I said we were only 2 hours from home. She said, that is not what I asked. I drove home anyway. Now, in our kitchen, she stirred the soup. I saw it in a magazine today, she said. It is closed now. She said it gently. No accusation, no bitterness, just information. But the sentence landed hard. It is closed now. I had built my whole life on the idea that waiting preserved choices. But waiting had quietly erased them. Places close. Bodies change. People get tired. The price you avoid paying today does not always stay available tomorrow. I looked at the steam rising from the pot. It curled upward. and vanished. I thought about that inn, the rocking chairs, the porch lamps, the night we could have had. Not a grand night, not a luxury anyone would photograph. Just one night away from the usual walls. I wondered what we might have talked about. If I had stopped the car, maybe nothing special. Maybe that was the point. A man can lose a life by refusing ordinary beauty. That week, the memories came faster. They did not come in order. Regret rarely does. It comes like loose bolts, rattling inside a machine, one small sound at a time, until the whole thing shakes. I remembered Elaine holding a blue dress in a department store. It was not expensive by most standards. It was more than she would spend on herself. She turned in front of the mirror once. Her cheeks looked pink. I said, "Do you really need another dress?" She put it back. I remembered our 35th anniversary. She wanted a table by the window at a nice place downtown. I picked the early bird special at a family restaurant because the portions were bigger. She said the meatloaf was good. I believed her because believing her was easier than seeing her disappointment. I remembered a Christmas when she bought me a new drill battery because mine kept dying. I bought her a practical coat, warm, brown, on sale. She thanked me. She wore it for years, but I had seen her touch a red scarf in the store that same day. Soft wool, bright as winter berries. She did not ask for it. Elaine rarely asked twice. That may be the saddest thing about a gentle person. They make it easy for you to miss the wound. By Friday, I was not sleeping well. I woke before dawn and listened to the house. The furnace clicked on. Pipes settled in the walls. Elaine breathed softly beside me. I stared at the ceiling and thought about accounts, checking, savings, retirement, emergency fund. I had names for every pile of money, but I did not have names for what I had spent to get them. I had no account for missed mornings, no ledger for unheld hands, no folder for every time I said, "We should be careful," when I really meant, "I am scared." That sentence frightened me. I am scared. Men of my generation did not say that much. We said, "Be realistic." We said, "Money does not grow on trees." We said, "You never know what could happen." We built whole personalities out of avoiding those three words. I am scared. The next day, I went back to the garage. I opened the shoebox again. This time, I did not sit down. I took out the old train brochures and spread them across the bench. The pictures were outdated. The prices meant nothing now. But the route still existed. I checked online. The train still ran down the coast. Different company, different schedule, higher price. Of course it was higher. Time charges interest. I looked at the first class option. Wider seats, meals included, observation car, priority boarding. I heard my old voice again. "Coach is fine. You will be sitting either way. Do not get carried away." You are not that kind of man. That last sentence stopped me. You are not that kind of man. What kind of man? The kind who lets his wife lean back in a soft seat? The kind who drinks decent coffee while the ocean goes by? The kind who wears the shirt his wife once loved on him? The kind who admits that comfort is not a moral failure? I closed the laptop, then opened it again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I did not book anything. Not yet. The guilt was still stronger than the courage. But something had shifted. The old fear still spoke. I just no longer trusted its voice. That evening, Elaine and I sat at the kitchen table. After dinner, she was sorting pills into a plastic weekly box. Morning, noon, evening, bedtime. Each little lid clicked shut. Click, click, click. I hated that sound. Not because of the medicine, because every click felt like proof that our life had entered a narrower hallway. Elaine caught me watching. "I am all right," she said. "I know," I lied. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Her fingers were warm, a little unsteady. "Harold," she said, "you have been somewhere else all week." That was the sentence That opened the door. Not all the way, just a crack. I looked at her hand on mine. For once, I did not make a joke. I did not mention bills. I did not escape to the garage. I said, I found the old train papers. She was very still, so still. I could hear the refrigerator start. Her eyes moved toward the hallway, as if the memory were standing there. The coastal train, she asked. I nodded. She looked down at the pillbox. Then she gave a small laugh. That was a long time ago. It was, but not long enough to stop hurting. I said, I should have taken you. She shook her head. You were trying to be careful. There it was again. That mercy, that soft protection she kept offering me. But this time, I could not accept it. Because mercy can become another hiding place. If a man is desperate enough, I pulled my hand back gently, not away from her, away from the lie. I was not just careful, I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar. I think I was afraid. Elaine looked at me then, really looked, and the room changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but something old shifted its weight between us. I almost kept talking. I almost told her about the watch, about the shirt, about the tickets I had not bought yet, about the way her dropped cup had scared me more than any bill ever had. But I stopped, because I could feel that if I said one more true thing, the rest would come with it. And I was not ready. Not at the kitchen table. Not with the pillbox open, and the dishes still drying by the sink. So I said, I have been thinking. Elaine waited. She has always been better at waiting than I deserved. I looked toward the dark window. Our reflection stared back at me. Two old people in a quiet kitchen. A man who had saved carefully. A woman who had wanted gently. And somewhere between us, a whole life of postponed things stood waiting to be named. That night, I went upstairs before Elaine. I opened the dresser drawer. I took out the watch box. The paper made a soft tearing sound. When I unwrapped it, inside, the watch looked smaller than it had in the store. Quieter, almost humble. I fastened it around my wrist. The leather was cool at first. Then it warmed against my skin. I stood in front of the mirror. Same face, same gray hair, same tired eyes. But the watch changed something. Not outside, inside. It did not make me feel rich. It made me feel present. That scared me more. Because once you feel present, you notice how absent you have been. I looked at the old watch, lying on the dresser. I should have felt loyal to it. Instead, I felt sorry for the man who had worn it like a badge. A man proud of needing little. A man who confused self-denial with love. A man who had built a savings account, large enough to feel safe, and a life small enough to manage. I sat on the edge of the bed. Downstairs, I heard Elaine turn off the kitchen light. Her steps were slow on the stairs, one hand on the railing. One step, then another. I listened to every one. By the time she reached the landing, I knew I could not keep postponing without losing something no money could ever buy. When Elaine reached the bedroom, I was still standing there. The new watch was on my wrist. The box sat open on the dresser. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She looked at the watch. Then she looked at me, not shocked, not angry, just surprised in a soft, careful way. That's handsome, she said. I touched the band with my thumb. It costs too much, I said. She gave me the smallest smile. Then why did you buy it? I had no practiced answer, no sensible explanation, no speech ready in my pocket. So I told the truth, because I wanted it. Those 4 words nearly undid me. Elaine came closer. She touched the watch face with one finger. Her hand shook a little, but this time I did not look away. It suits you, she said. I swallowed hard. I bought the train tickets too. She went still again. The room seemed to hold its breath. What train tickets? The coastal train, I said. First class. Her eyes widened. I waited for the question. How much? When? Why now? But Elaine did not ask any of that. She sat down on the edge of the bed, both hands in her lap. Then she laughed once, but it broke in the middle. Oh, Harold, she whispered. I sat beside her. The mattress dipped between us. For years, that little space had felt ordinary. That night, it felt like a canyon. I should have done it sooner, I said. Elaine shook her head. Do not start punishing yourself. But it was already too late. The punishment had not started that night. It had started 40 years ago. Every time I called love a luxury, I said, do you remember the lake cabin? She blinked. The one with the blue door? I nodded. You wanted to rent it for your birthday. She looked down. That was a silly idea. No, I said. It was a beautiful idea. The word surprised us both. I had never said that before. Beautiful. Not practical. Not affordable. Not reasonable. Beautiful. The room felt different after that word, like a window had opened somewhere. I kept going, because stopping would have been cowardice. You showed me the picture 3 times. Elaine folded her hands tighter. I remember. I said it was too far for one weekend. You were tired then, she said. I was always tired. That does not make you bad. No, I said, but it made me small. Elaine looked at me then. I could see she wanted to protect me. She had been doing that all our married life, protecting me from my own harshness, protecting the children from my worry, protecting her wants from my fear. I did not deserve another rescue, so I did not let her give me one. I made our life smaller than it had to be. My voice cracked on smaller. Not loudly, just enough. Elaine's eyes filled. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. Her fingers rested over the new watch band. That simple touch hurt worse than any accusation could have, because she was not angry. She was still loving me. That is when the memories began arriving, all at once, not like thoughts, like people coming through a door. The little bakery she wanted to try. On Maple Street, closed now. The dance class flyer she kept under a magnet for 6 months, thrown away during spring cleaning. The Sunday drives I ended early, because gas was high. The porch swing she wanted, that I said would rot in the rain. The small gold earrings she admired, and never mentioned again. Each one seemed harmless at the time. That was the trap. A single no rarely looks cruel. But 50 years of no can build a wall around a marriage. I put my face in my hands. I did not sob yet. I only sat there breathing hard, like a man who had climbed too many stairs. Elaine squeezed my wrist. Harold, she said. I shook my head. I was in the house with you. The words came out slowly. But I was not always with you. She did not answer. That silence told me. She understood too well. I looked at the floor. The carpet was worn thin, near the dresser, a path from bed to closet, a path made by years. I had spent a lifetime making paths. Between duties, work to bank, bank to grocery, grocery to home, home to bed. I had walked all those paths faithfully, but I had not always walked toward her. I would sit beside you at dinner, I said, and still be counting money in my head. Elaine's mouth trembled. I would hold your hand in church and think about the property tax. She closed her eyes. I would kiss you good night and wonder if the furnace would last. My voice dropped. I was never all the way there. That was the first true wound. Not the missed trips, not the unworn shirt, not the train that left without us. It was the fact that I had given Elaine a man divided in half, one half present, one half guarding against disaster, and the guarded half kept winning. Elaine opened her eyes. They were wet now. You were a good husband, she said. That broke something in me, because she meant it. She truly meant it. And I had been good in many ways. That was what made the grief complicated. I had not failed by leaving. I had failed by staying with only part of myself. I started crying then, quiet at first, then harder, ugly, breathless crying. That embarrassed me even as it came. I had not cried like that since my mother's funeral. Elaine moved closer. She did not shush me. She did not tell me to stop. She only put her head against my shoulder. Her hair smelled faintly of lavender shampoo. That scent carried me back decades. To motel rooms with 2 children asleep. To kitchens with steam on the windows. To evenings when she was young and waiting for me to come home. How many times had she waited? For a man who arrived tired, worried, and only half available? I turned toward her. I am sorry, I said. The words felt too small. I am so sorry. She touched my cheek. Harold, I had a life with you. I know. A real life. I know. And I am grateful for it. That should have comforted me. Instead, it opened the deepest place, because gratitude can sit beside loss. A life can be good and still have rooms you never entered. I said, I wish I had given you more beauty. Elaine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You gave me loyalty. I used loyalty to hide from joy. She looked startled by that. So was I. But it was true. I had turned steadiness into a shield. I had made predictability feel holy. I had treated desire like a leak in the roof. Something to patch quickly before it caused damage. But desire was not the damage. The damage was all the sealing up, all the tightening, all the saying no, before either of us could feel foolish for hoping. I stood then, because sitting still hurt too much. I walked to the closet. I took out the cream-colored shirt. The plastic cover rustled. Elaine watched me. I pulled the shirt free. It still held its shape, perfect and unused. I held it against my chest. You liked this on me. She smiled through tears. I did. I was saving it. For what? That question landed gently, but it landed exactly where it needed to. For what? I looked at the shirt, at the smooth collar, at the buttons still fastened, at the sleeves never creased by an elbow. I had saved it from stains. From weather? From where? And in saving it, I had kept it from becoming part of my life. I whispered, I do not know. Elaine stood slowly. She came toward me. Wear it on the train, she said. That should have been a sweet moment. And it was. But it was also unbearable. Because she still believed there was a train coming. She still believed we could step into something new. I had almost waited too long. That thought hit me so hard. I had to sit again. Elaine sat beside me. The shirt lay across my knees. The new watch ticked on my wrist. It was a small sound, but I could hear it. Not literally, maybe. But inside me, I heard it clearly. Tick, tick, tick. For the first time, time did not feel like a number. It felt like a door, slowly closing. The trip happened 2 weeks later. I wore the shirt. Elaine wore a navy sweater I had not seen in years. At the station, I bought the good coffee, not the cheapest, not the largest, the one that smelled rich and warm. Elaine held the cup in both hands. She breathed it in before taking a sip. That is wonderful, she said. Just that. Wonderful. The word filled the cold platform air. I almost cried right there, beside the luggage cart. Our seats were wide and soft. The windows curved high above us. When the train pulled out, Elaine reached for my hand. I took it. I did not check my phone. I did not calculate what the weekend cost. I did not wonder whether first class was worth it. Her shoulder rested against mine. The city slipped behind us. Warehouses, water towers, backyards, then open fields. Then the long silver line of water appearing between the trees. Elaine turned toward the window. Her face changed. Not younger. That is not the right word. She looked returned to some part of herself I had not seen in years. Her mouth softened. Her eyes brightened. She leaned forward, like the view had called her name. I watched her watch the ocean, and I understood something. I could barely stand. The luxury was not the seat. It was not the coffee. It was not the watch, or the shirt, or the price of the tickets. The luxury was seeing her unguarded again, seeing want arrive on her face, without apology, seeing her receive something, without first asking if we deserved it. That was the gift. Not to her only. To me, because I had not just denied her moments, I had denied myself the sight of her having them. That afternoon, we ate in the dining car, white cloth on the table, real plates, a small lamp between us. Elaine ordered salmon. I ordered steak. Neither of us mentioned the prices. When the waiter brought dessert, Elaine laughed. We never do this, she said. I said, we do now. She looked at me carefully, not doubting me, measuring the change. I could not blame her. A man does not become free. In one weekend, fear does not leave. Just because you bought a ticket, it sits nearby, arms folded, waiting for its chance. But for once, I did not invite it to the table. That night, after dinner, we sat in the observation car. Most people had gone back to their rooms. The lights were low. The glass reflected our faces over the dark water outside. Elaine's hand rested on mine. Her thumb moved slowly across my knuckles. I looked at that reflection. Two old faces. Two lives worn smooth by work and weather. Not tragic faces. Not ruined faces. Just faces with less time ahead than behind. And that is where the truth finally settled. Quietly. Completely. I had spent years preparing for storms and missed so many clear evenings. I had insured the house, but underinsured our joy. I had protected the savings and neglected the memories. I had been so afraid of becoming poor someday that I made us poor in the present, poor in beauty, poor in surprise, poor in ordinary wonder. That was the real poverty, not an empty account, an unlived afternoon. A postponed kiss, a view never seen, a song never heard in person, a wife learning to want less, because wanting more made her lonely. I turned to Elaine. The words came before I could polish them. I think I stole time from us. She shook her head immediately. No, but I kept going. Not years on a calendar. My throat tightened. Moments. She looked at me. I stole moments. The train rocked gently beneath us. Somewhere far down the car, a glass clinked. I said, I thought money was the thing we could run out of. Elaine did not move. But we were running out of evenings. That was the sentence. That emptied me. I could not speak after it. Elaine's face crumpled. Not in anger, in recognition. She knew. Of course she knew. She had known in the quiet way. Wives sometimes know before husbands are brave enough to tell the truth. She put both hands around mine. Then let us not lose this one, she said. That was all. No speech, no blame, no forgiveness ceremony. Just a small sentence, offered in a dark train car. Let us not lose this one. I held her hand, like it was something breakable. Because everything is. That is the part I learned too late, and still just in time. Everything you love is breakable. Your body, your plans, your routines, the voice across the breakfast table, the hand reaching for yours in the dark. You can care for those things. You can honor them, but you cannot preserve them by refusing to live with them. You cannot keep life safe by keeping it unused. A saved life is not the same as a lived one. That is the line I keep coming back to. A saved life is not the same as a lived one. I wish someone had said that to me. When I was 40, maybe I would not have listened. At 40, I was too proud of my caution. At 50, too busy being needed. At 60, too practiced at saying later. But maybe one sentence would have stayed somewhere inside me. Maybe it would have rattled around like a loose screw until I finally heard it. So I am saying it now, not as a preacher, not as a man who figured life out. I am saying it as Harold Bennett, 68 years old, wearing a watch I did not need, beside a woman I nearly loved too cautiously. Do not confuse fear with wisdom. Do not confuse self-denial with devotion. Do not make your family inherit only your carefulness. Let them inherit your laughter too. Let them remember you choosing something beautiful for no better reason than being alive together. It does not have to be a train. It does not have to cost much. It might be breakfast at the diner with the good pancakes. It might be the warm coat in the color you actually like. It might be paying someone else to fix what you are too tired to fix. It might be sitting beside your wife without reaching for the bill pile. It might be calling an old friend before another year closes over the thought. Small things count. Maybe they count most, because a life is rarely lost in one large refusal. It is lost in tiny postponements That all sounded reasonable. I still save money. I still check the weather. I still turn off lights. In empty rooms. I am not pretending prudence is wrong, but I no longer worship it. I no longer let it sit at the head of my table. Money has its place. Fear has its warning, but neither one gets to be the owner of my life anymore. The morning after that train ride, Elaine and I woke before sunrise. She was still asleep, with her hand tucked under her cheek. The curtains in our room were pale with early light. My watch lay on the nightstand. For once, I did not reach for it. I watched her breathe. Slow, steady. Here. That word felt holy. Here. Not later. Not someday. Not after everything is settled. Here. I got up quietly and made coffee in the little machine by the window. It was terrible hotel coffee, weak as dishwater. We drank it anyway, from paper cups, while the sky turned pink over the water. Elaine leaned against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke for a while. There was nothing to improve, nothing to manage, nothing to solve. Just morning, just breath, just the unbelievable mercy of still having time. When we came home, I did not become a different man overnight. Men like me do not transform with music swelling in the background. I still catch myself comparing prices. I still hear my father's voice. I still feel that old pinch when something seems unnecessary. But now I ask a better question. Not, can we afford this? First I ask, what will this give us while we are still here? That question has changed me. It has made our house warmer, not richer, warmer. There are yellow flowers by the sink now, sometimes fresh ones, sometimes cheap ones, sometimes crooked ones from the market. Elaine says they make the room happy. I believe her now. I wore the cream shirt again last Sunday, just to sit on the porch. No occasion, no company, no reason. Elaine looked at me and said, there you are. 3 words, there you are. I have thought about them every day since. Maybe that is what this has all been. Not spending, not aging, not regret. Maybe it has been a long, slow return. Back to the man, before fear trained him. Back to the husband who once made promises without calculating them to death. Back to the present moment, which is the only place love ever actually happens. If you have been saving everything for a safer day, I understand. I know that grip. I know the white knuckles. I know the pride of needing very little. But look closely at what your carefulness is costing. Not in dollars. In moments, in softness, in faces you love that may still be waiting for you to come all the way back. I am not telling you to be foolish. I am telling you not to be absent. Buy the coffee that smells good. Wear the shirt before the funeral. Take the ride while hands can still hold. Say yes once before no becomes your whole personality. You still have this day. Maybe that is not much. Maybe it is everything. My name is Harold Bennett. I am 68 years old. I spent most of my life saving for later. Now I am learning that later is not a place. It is only a promise. Time never signed. If this story meant something to you, I would be grateful. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel. If you want more stories like this, and if there is one thing you have been postponing, I hope you give yourself permission to stop waiting so long.